In the summer of 1864, while traveling with a wagon train through what is now Kansas, McGee and his group were ambushed by a band of Brule Lakota Sioux warriors. The attack was brutal and swift, and McGee found himself face to face with a terrifying fate. During this encounter, he was captured and subjected to a gruesome act that many would consider to be a death sentence. He was scalped. However, Robert McGee's story doesn't end there. Against all odds, he survived this horrific ordeal. His resilience and will to live would see him through one of the most painful and dramatic experiences imaginable. Over the next few minutes, we'll explore the details of McGee's life, the events leading up to that fateful day, and the remarkable journey he took to overcome the odds stacked against him. So buckle up and get ready to be amazed by the incredible tale of Robert McGee, the man who survived being scalped. Howdy folks, today we're diving into one of the most impressive stories from the 19th century. We're talking about Robert McGee, a man who endured one of the most brutal experiences imaginable and lived to tell the tale. So who was Robert McGee and what makes his story so incredible? Let's find out. Robert McGee was born in 1845 in the bustling frontier town of Wheeling, West Virginia. This was a time of great transformation in America. The country was expanding rapidly, driven by the promise of new opportunities and the belief in manifest destiny, the idea that it was America's divine mission to expand westward across the continent. Growing up in this era, McGee was surrounded by stories of adventure, danger, and the promise of a better life on the frontier. From a young age, McGee was no stranger to hardship. His family, like many others at the time, faced the daily challenges of frontier life. They lived in a modest home, relying on farming and occasional trade to make ends meet. Robert, being one of the older children, had to shoulder significant responsibilities early on. He learned the value of hard work and resilience as he helped his family tend to their land and livestock. Education was a luxury not always available to frontier families, and McGee's schooling was sporadic at best. He attended a local one-room schoolhouse whenever he could, learning the basics of reading, writing, and mathematics. But much of his knowledge came from practical experience and the stories told by elders and travelers passing through. These tales of their exploits and perilous journeys ignited a spark in young Robert, filling him with a sense of adventure and a desire to see the world beyond his small town. By the age of 13, McGee was already thinking about his future. The lure of the unknown and the promise of adventure proved irresistible. In 1858, seizing an opportunity to fulfill his dreams, he decided to enlist in the US Army. It was an unusual decision for someone so young, but the times were different, and the Army often accepted eager young recruits looking to make their mark. Enlisting in the Army opened a new chapter in McGee's life. He was assigned to a cavalry unit, which meant he would be constantly on the move, patrolling vast stretches of territory and protecting settlers from potential threats. The army life was tough, demanding both physically and mentally, but McGee thrived in this environment. His early experiences on the frontier had toughened him up, and he quickly adapted to the rigors of military life. His unit was often tasked with escorting wagon trains and providing protection to settlers moving west. It was during one of these missions that McGee's life would take a dramatic and near-fatal turn. On July 12, 1864, the 19-year-old McGee and his group were traveling along the Santa Fe Trail. The plain stretched endlessly around them, with the horizon seemingly unreachable. The journey was long and arduous, filled with the constant threat of danger. Native American tribes, including the Brule Lakota Sioux, were fiercely protective of their lands, and tensions between them and the settlers were at an all-time high. That day, as the wagon train moved swiftly through the open terrain, they were suddenly ambushed by a band of Brule Lakota Sioux warriors, led by the infamous chief, Little Turtle. The attack was swift and brutal, catching the travelers completely off guard. McGee, along with his fellow soldiers and settlers, found himself surrounded and outnumbered. In the chaos that ensued, McGee was captured. The Sioux warriors, in a show of power and retribution, decided to make an example of him. McGee was singled out and brought before Little Turtle. What happened next was a gruesome and horrifying act that many would have considered a death sentence. McGee was scalped alive. The pain and shock he must have felt are unimaginable, but somehow he remained conscious through the ordeal. The practice called scalping involves the removal of the scalp with hair attached from an enemy's head. The act of scalping was not just a way of killing, it was a deeply symbolic and cultural practice. For the Native American tribes, scalping an enemy was a way of asserting dominance and instilling fear. It was a brutal reminder of the ongoing conflicts and the high stakes of the territorial disputes of the time. After the savage attack, Robert McGee lay on the plains, gravely injured and teetering on the brink of death. The Sioux warriors believed they had left him for dead. But against all odds, McGee was still alive, fighting through unimaginable pain and shock. Hours passed before help arrived, but the young soldier's incredible tenacity kept him clinging to life. It was a scorching July day when a group of soldiers and settlers who had survived the ambush stumbled upon McGee's motionless body. They were shocked to see the horrific wounds he had sustained, particularly the gruesome scalping that left his skull exposed. Yet, even more astonishing was the fact that McGee was still breathing, his eyes flickering open with a faint glimmer of hope. The soldiers knew they had to act swiftly. They provided immediate first aid using whatever supplies they had on hand. They cleaned his wounds as best as they could and carefully transported him to the nearest military outpost. Every jolt and bump of the rough journey must have been excruciating for McGee, but he endured with his sheer willpower driving him forward. Upon reaching the outpost, McGee received more extensive medical treatment. The military surgeons were astounded by his condition. Scalping injuries were often fatal due to the risk of infection and blood loss. Yet, McGee's determination to survive was evident. The doctors worked tirelessly, cleaning and suturing his wounds and doing everything in their power to stabilize him. They knew that McGee's survival would depend not just on their medical skills, but on his inner strength and resilience. The road to recovery was long and filled with obstacles. McGee had to endure multiple surgeries to repair the damage done to his scalp and skull. The pain was relentless, but so it was his will to live. Slowly, against all odds, McGee began to heal. His recovery process was grueling, requiring both physical and emotional fortitude. Each day brought new challenges, but with the support of the medical staff and his own unwavering spirit, McGee made remarkable progress. After surviving the brutal scalping and undergoing extensive medical treatment, Robert McGee faced a long and arduous road to recovery. The physical wounds were severe, but the emotional and psychological scars were equally challenging. Yet, McGee's spirit remained unbroken. His determination to live a full life despite his trauma became the driving force behind his recovery. McGee's initial months after the incident were spent in military hospitals where he received ongoing care. The surgeons had done their best to repair his scalp and heal the wounds, but the journey to full recovery was fraught with challenges. Infections were a constant threat, and the pain was often unbearable. Yet, McGee's willpower saw him through these dark times. He became a source of inspiration to others in the hospital, embodying resilience and the human capacity to overcome immense adversity. Once McGee was well enough to leave the hospital, he faced the daunting task of reintegrating into society. The physical scars he bore were a stark reminder of his traumatic experience, and he had to learn to navigate life with these visible reminders. Despite these challenges, McGee refused to let his past define him negatively. Instead, he used his story to educate and inspire others. Robert McGee found work as a scout and guide, roles that took him back into the very landscapes where his ordeal had occurred. This might seem surprising, but for McGee, the frontier was both a place of great trauma and profound significance. By returning to these lands, he reclaimed his agency and faced his fears head-on. His knowledge of the terrain and his first-hand experience with the dangers of the frontier made him an invaluable asset to those navigating the West. Throughout his life, McGee was a living testament to survival and resilience. He shared his story with many, offering insights into the brutal realities of frontier life and the complex relationships between settlers and Native American tribes. His experiences provided a unique perspective on the cultural and historical context of the time, highlighting the often violent clashes that happened in America's westward expansion. McGee also became something of a local legend. People were fascinated by his story, and he often found himself recounting the details of his survival. Despite the pain it might have caused him to relive those moments, McGee understood the power of his story. It was not just a tale of suffering, but one of triumph over adversity. His ability to survive and thrive after such a horrific event offered hope and inspiration to many. In his later years, Robert McGee continued to be active in his community. He remained connected to the frontier life he had known since childhood, and his experiences made him a respected figure among his peers. His story was documented in various accounts, ensuring that his incredible tale of survival would not be forgotten. Despite the passage of time, McGee's legacy endures. His life is a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity to overcome even the most horrific experiences. McGee's story is not just about a single incident of brutality. It is about how one man chose to live in the aftermath of such trauma, turning his experience into a source of strength and inspiration. Thank you for riding along with us today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more tales from the wild, wild west. And always remember, folks, to keep your boots dusty, your spirits high, and I'll see you on the next time.